Welcome everybody to the Cowtown webinar series. Thank you for joining us today. We do want you to save the date for February 25th through 27th of 2022. Now I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Youngs.
All right, everybody. So thanks for joining us for this talk today. I hope that you guys are excited for Cowtown. I'm excited for Cowtown. I'm going to be running the ultra marathon this year, and I've got a marathon that is that I'm actually running a couple of weeks before that as well. So it's going to be a busy fall and winter running season for me. I hope that you guys stay healthy throughout your whole training process. So I'm going to be talking today on stretching and strength training in the endurance running athlete. Notice here that I bolded and underlined endurance running athlete. I think this is really important because whenever we're talking about stretching and we're talking about strength training, it affects runners, weightlifters, cyclists, sprinters. No matter what sport, it's going to affect you in different ways. So we're talking specifically about the endurance running athlete, and I'm going to define what that means, and we're going to go into it. But in terms of this talk itself, this doesn't translate over into other sports. I'm specifically concentrating on running because that's what we're all going to be doing, okay? So just really quick about me, I don't have any disclosures. I don't have any sponsorships. I wish I was sponsored by Nike. I'm not that fast. Everything that we discuss here is going to be my opinion. I am a sports medicine physician by trade. Went to medical school, obviously went to residency, then I did a fellowship in sports medicine. This is what I do full time. Just quickly here, we can take a look through. I love to run with my family. I've got a 10-year-old daughter and I'm married. I've got a wife. My daughter and I tend to run together. She's limited to about the 10K distance or less until she's a little bit older. This picture down here is of me whenever I finished the Colorado Marathon a couple of years ago. This is a picture of me and my wife after we did the Zion half marathon, which is actually up in Utah. That was probably the rainiest, and even though it doesn't look like it in the picture, the snowiest half marathon I've been in. It was just a muddy mess the entire time. And then I also, whenever I'm not running, I ride my bike as well. This is actually a picture of the start for the Hotter Than Hell 100-mile kind of endurance race, if you want to call it that, that I did 2 years ago. I haven't really been doing much in terms of marathon or half marathon over the last year because of COVID has really limited things. So I'm really glad that Cowtown is going to be back to the full marathon this year. So just a little bit about myself here so you know who you're talking or who's talking to you guys. So let's get into it. So what even is stretching, right? Like when somebody says stretching, it can mean a bunch of different things. Whenever I think of stretching, I kind of break it up into 3 different types of stretching. You have static stretching, you have dynamic stretching, you have ballistic stretching, okay? When people think of stretching, they almost always think of static stretching, which is why I bolded and underlined it right here at the beginning. It is the most common form of stretching. So a static stretch is where you're lengthening the muscle to a point where you feel discomfort, and then you hold that position for 25 to 30 seconds, and then you rest and you do it again. You know, whenever somebody asks you to touch your toes and you stay down in that position, you can feel your hamstring stretching. That is a static stretch, okay? That is what people typically refer to when they think about stretching, or I need a stretch before my run, okay? The second stretch that we talk about is dynamic stretching. So this is a form of stretching, and I'll actually show you guys here in a little bit, where you're trying to mimic your sporting activity. You're kind of warming the body up before the event. And one of the things I like to talk about is this is kind of like a sprinter who's doing long strides before a race. I'm sure you guys have watched the Olympics before. You'll see people down in their blocks before the race, and they're pushing out of their blocks and they're sprinting for maybe 10 to 15, 20 yards or 30 or 40 meters before their race. They're just trying to get themselves warmed up. The third form of stretch is called a ballistic stretch. This is I don't recommend this, first of all. I think it increases your injury risk, but you're basically stretching the muscle and then contracting it really, really, really fast. I've seen people kind of do almost like a calf raise where they put their leg or the tip of their foot, kind of the ball of their foot over a curb, and then they let their calf stretch and they kind of bounce like this to kind of stretch their calves. I don't recommend this. I'm not going to talk at all about ballistic stretching because in my opinion, it doesn't work very well. People will stretch for a lot of different reasons, okay? And so we'll kind of get into these in a minute, but you'll hear people stretching to improve performance or to reduce injury risk. So people do stretching for a lot of different reasons, okay? I want to define before we start what an endurance running athlete is. I'm going to go back to the beginning really quick, because again, whenever I talk about the stretching and strength training, we're talking about endurance running athletes only. We're not talking about any other type of athlete. So what is an endurance running athlete? This is somebody who's going to run a 5K or further at one time. So basically everybody doing Cowtown is going to be running a 5K or further. Now, walking, running doesn't matter. You're still going to be an endurance athlete, and this talk specifically is going to apply to you. So whether you're running 5K, half marathon, ultra marathon, whatever, this applies to you. You are an endurance running athlete. So briefly, like I said, why do people stretch before a run? There are usually, at least in my opinion, probably 4 different reasons why people will want to stretch before they run. I break them down into physiologic goals like performance and reducing DOMs, which we'll talk about, preventing injury, things that are happening in your body. And then things people really don't think about very often are psychological goals. There are mental goals to stretching as well. We're going to get into that at the end. I don't think people pay enough attention to psychology and how our mind affects our physical performance, but it's a big deal. Okay, we'll get into that shortly. Okay. So really quick, like I said, what I'm going to do, let me go back. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the different physiologic goals that people have for stretching. And then I'm going to talk about what the science and evidence shows regarding its efficacy or how effective it is, okay? So let's talk about DOMs first. So what is DOMs? I've kind of bolded it here for us. The D stands for delayed, the O stands for onset, and is muscle, S is soreness. DOMs, delayed onset muscle soreness. So the way I describe this, so let's say that you go out, you run a half marathon, okay? And you've been training for months for this, right? You run, you're tired afterwards, and you're like, I'm done with training, I'm tired, I took a lot of time to do this. So you might rest after that for a week or 2 or 3 or 4. After the last marathon I ran, I think I didn't run at all. Like I hated running for like 6 weeks. Like I didn't do anything. I just sat at home, right? So I went 6 weeks without really doing anything. And then I decided, hey, I need to be active again. So after that 6 weeks of rest, I got up and I would do like high intensity interval training, or I would do sprints. And what you'll notice is after you've had a long period where you're not doing anything, you do activity, you get real sore, right? Like your muscles will hurt in places you never thought possible. And this will typically occur 1 or 2 days after the activity. Well, that's DOMS. That is delayed onset muscle soreness. That is something that happens when your body experiences a physical stress that it's not used to. And so sometimes people will stretch before and after an activity they haven't done before as a way to prevent muscle soreness from happening, okay? So DOMS itself usually gets worse in the first couple of days, and then it subsides. And then afterwards, if you go back and you do that same activity, it's not as difficult, you're not as sore because the body is adapting to it, okay? So what is static stretching and DOMS? Like what is static stretching specifically? How does it relate to delayed onset muscle soreness? And again, I'm concentrating on static stretching first because this is the type of stretching that everybody does, whether or not it's helpful. So it is well known in my profession. Static stretching has been studied all over the place, from the 80s up till now and before then, okay? So what I want to do while I talk here is I want to show you guys some of the evidence. I'm not going to dig through research studies like that's boring, but I do want to show you guys that the things I'm telling you are evidence-based. This isn't just some random person in an office talking to you, okay? So whenever you look up research studies, you'll see a lot that revolve around delayed onset muscle soreness and static stretching. And I'll save you all of the reading here, but I did attach some of these articles. At the end of the day, static stretching has never been shown to decrease the symptoms of delayed onset muscle soreness, okay? You can look at all of these here. Now, I did put a star next to this, okay? And this is important. I'm going to get to this in a second. But this study was done in 1989, 1993, 2011, 1989. This was done in 2018. So, really throughout the years, this has been studied quite frequently. And you can see here that static stretching and or warm up does not prevent delayed onset muscle soreness resulting from excessive exercise. Same thing here, static stretching induced significantly more delayed onset muscle soreness than ballistic stretching. And we're not talking about ballistic stretching, but it still significantly increased symptoms of delayed onset muscle soreness. Same thing here, static stretching does not produce clinically important reduction in delayed onset muscle soreness in healthy adults. Now, the reason I started this, okay, and I'm going to come back to this in a little while, okay. So this study, they specifically looked at perceived muscle soreness, and then they actually measured muscle damage through taking some blood. What they saw here, this is important, is that stretching resulted in small to moderate beneficial effects, good effects on perceived muscle soreness. So perceived in our minds, right? But whenever they actually drew blood to look for muscle damage and inflammation, found no difference. Okay, no difference in the people that were static stretching. So the verdict here is that static stretching does not improve symptoms of DOMS. So if you are stretching solely for the purpose of reducing muscle soreness, it doesn't work. Static stretching does not work. Okay, so I'm not going to recommend for you to do static stretching exercises to reduce delayed onset muscle soreness. Okay. So what about running performance, right? We all care about running performance. How am I going to get faster? How am I going to finish my marathon faster? How am I going to PR? Can I qualify for Boston? All of these things, or just finishing in general. I want to finish before it gets too hot outside. So how does static stretching result or affect running performance? Again, little star here, but let's go through this really quick here. So this study here, our findings suggest that stretching before an endurance event may actually lower performance and increase energy cost of running. This one here, pre-exercise stretching has no impact upon running economy, which is the way that we run, and submaximal exercise oxygen cost, which really affects our performance. So this study also indicates that static stretching does not help our running performance. Again, I started this for a reason, right? And so this basically right here is probably the most important part of this entire paragraph. I don't want you guys to look at these p-values. It's just research, kind of complicated stuff, but take the sentence. The results of this study should encourage recreational runners to insert stretching during warm-up to optimize the running energy cost, but this is most important, reducing the perception in our mind of effort and making the training sessions more enjoyable, okay? So this study seems to indicate that stretching can be good to make things more enjoyable for us, okay? The verdict here is, I guess it's a little bit more controversial. Most evidence that I've poured over my training and even looking through now seems to suggest that static stretching does not improve performance for us as endurance athletes, okay? So far, stretching doesn't really help muscle soreness and it doesn't really help our performance. What about injury prevention? If you get injured during training for a marathon or anything else, it's going to affect your performance during marathon if you can even complete it, okay? We've all dealt with these nagging injuries during our training that can, we miss training days trying to recuperate. Sometimes you're seeing a physician, and so it can definitely be a pain, literally and figuratively, I guess. But what does the research say about stretching for injury prevention? Here, this study, which is a huge Cochrane database system review, all that means is they poured over a ton of studies to come to this determination. They found no evidence that stretching reduces lower limb soft tissue injuries, like a strained muscle, for example. Okay, this is a big one that came out of the American Family Physician that basically says the same thing. Their evidence-based answer, this was done in 2016, is that stretching before exercise does not reduce the risk of injury. Okay, so what is the verdict? Static stretching does not prevent soft tissue injuries. So it's like, for all of our physiologic goals, for all the physical goals of stretching, they don't really work. Stretching doesn't really work for endurance running, okay? So, I mean, is it even helpful at all? Is the question, like, okay, why am I doing this? I say yes, it can be helpful, okay? And the reason it can be helpful, I'm gonna play this. So this is a YouTube video of a female runner. She's a hurdler. I'm pretty sure that you guys have probably seen her perform before because of her unique little warm up that she does before she runs. So I want you to watch the first 35-ish seconds of this video. And it's very important. About 30 seconds in, I want you to listen to specifically what she says about why she does this warm-up, okay? So I want you guys to watch this video and listen to what she says at about 30-ish seconds in about her warm-up.
Everyone's still going to remember the pre-race routine that I do and the video that went viral. So, you know, that's all right for me. You know, I think anything that brings attention to athletics is a good thing. You know, we're a fairly low-profile sport, and I'm just doing what I can to try and give us a bit more of a profile. The pre-race routine I've actually been doing for about 3 years now. So at the end of 2009, it was the Nationals of 2009 where I started doing it. I'm not really sure why. I think it's because there was music playing at the track, so I just went with it, and I ran a fantastic race after I did that, so I stuck with it, and now it's just a habit. I didn't even think about it, just a habit.
So again, that routine came up out of nowhere. She just decided to do it because she heard music playing, and she ran a great race. And there was no physical benefit from her dancing around like that, but she does the same thing every single time because it helped her perform better once. So I think that's really important. Most of us, if I take myself as an example, you know, whenever I was in middle school, what did I do before I would stretch? Before football practice or track, I would stretch. What would I do in high school before I would play a football game or do anything else? I would stretch, right? So I was always stretching. It became part of almost like the ritual of like pre-activity, right? So that's going to kind of bring me to this here, okay? So sporting rituals, they are a thing you guys have, I'm sure you have seen them, okay? So they're common throughout tons of sports, okay? This is Dwayne Wade. He's a really famous basketball player, used to be a basketball player. So he had this ritual where he would go up under the rim before a basketball game and he would do 3 pull-ups. That didn't help him physically speaking, but it was in his mind. It helped him prepare, right? You guys have probably heard stories of baseball players who will wear like the same socks for every game during the playoffs. Same thing, right? It's a ritual. It's not helping them perform, but it gets them mentally ready, okay? So same thing with her and her warm-up routine before she sprints. So like if I was to physically or if I was to clinically measure that, there's going to be no change in physical performance for these people. But performing like a regular thing, a regular predetermined routine prior to performance can help you focus. It can help you psychologically that leads you to a better performance. So I remember when I ran my first marathon, everybody likes to talk about like mile 20 to 22 of marathon. And it's like, that's where you hit the wall, like classically, like, wow, this is, you know, I've hit the wall. And, you know, I think it's more mental at that point than it is physical. Yeah, you physically need your body to like physically propel you through space, but you need your mind to get you through the last part of that marathon. And your mind is exceptionally important when it comes to activity. So even though at the end of the day, I am not going to recommend specifically that you start doing static stretches to improve performance for Cowtown or prevent injury for Cowtown. What I'm telling you is that if you have been doing this, if you've been doing these types of stretches over and over, and it's become a part of your routine, I wouldn't necessarily tell you to stop because it's probably really important for you in terms of your psychological preparation for your race. I showed this to you guys a couple of slides ago. The perception of effort in recreational endurance runners, okay? Again, just like I said before, this sentence is important. Static stretching can reduce the perception of effort, perception in your mind, making your training sessions more enjoyable. And that's the point of this, right? Like you want to do it because you like doing it. And so if stretching helps you mentally prepare for something, you should definitely do it. These are the types of stretches people do. Again, I'm not going to break down like a specific static stretching routine for you guys, because if you're not doing it, I'm not going to necessarily recommend you start doing it. And if you're already doing, I wouldn't recommend that you change it up. But these are specific stretches that people will do. Right here, this guy's stretching his calves. This lady is stretching both her calves and her hamstrings. This guy's stretching his quads. These are the types of things that you see people doing before a race. So at the end of the day, I'm not going to tell you guys to start static stretching. That is my opinion based on the evidence that I've seen over my training And you will probably, I'm sure you can find people with differing opinions. Most people in my profession would say that static stretching does not do anything for performance or chronic injury prevention in the endurance running athlete. Okay, so what about the dynamic warm-up? What about dynamic stretching? People will use the terms dynamic stretching and dynamic warm-up interchangeably sometimes. So I did do a separate slide on both because I kind of consider them different. So a dynamic stretch, again, kind of like I said, it's more about mimicking sporting activity. More studies need to be done to really give you an evidence-based answer. But I'm actually more in favor of dynamic stretching, and I actually do dynamic stretching whenever I prepare for a race. So this video is by REI. It's on YouTube. If you go onto youtube.com and you search for trail running dynamic stretches from REI, you're going to see that these are some examples of dynamic stretches that I would recommend doing before you start activity. These exercises they're mimicking the activity you're about to start doing. They're also increasing your heart rate to get ready for that race or that performance, so that your heart rate is not completely cold and your resting heart rate, and then you're asking your body to perform immediately and your heart's trying to play catch up. These are good, safe ways to warm your body up, and you're stretching and you're elongating the muscles in a way that I think is more beneficial. Okay, so again, this video is only a minute long. I would perform these exercises a few times each on, like here they're doing the right leg, I would obviously do the left, and I would probably do it for 15-20 seconds at a time on each side before you start activity. But I encourage you guys to go on there, check out those stretches for some recommendations that I have. Okay. So this is a video. I'm not gonna go through the whole thing for you guys, but you can search it up on YouTube. It's by REI, and it just goes through some of these dynamic stretches for you. You can actually see them go through. And so these are exercises you can do. I encourage you guys to actually go through and look at this video. You can see it. Nothing really mind-blowingly complicated. You're warming your body up, you're getting your heart rate up, your heart is prepared now because it's beating faster to perform immediately out of the gate, instead of starting the race at a resting heart rate where your heart's trying to catch up to the activity that your body is doing. By doing these types of things, you're warming the muscles up, you're increasing your heart rate, and you're more likely to perform better, especially at the beginning of the race. Okay, so these aren't complicated. I encourage you guys to go through and look at this video in depth. I've obviously muted it here, but they go through specifically and talk about the different dynamic warm-up stretches that you can do to really, I think, improve your pre-race routine. Okay, now there's another one here. This is through Canadian Running Magazine. Again, not a sponsor here, but whenever I see patients in my clinic, one of the big things I like to do is I can show you a single picture of one of these stretches, and it doesn't make any sense because it's an image frozen in time. Okay, but whenever this is the video, it's playing already. Whenever you're actually able to watch a video of somebody who's telling you how to do it while you're able to see the entire movement, it's much more beneficial. Okay, so dynamic warm-up is, I think, a little bit different. I think that just involves a little bit of extra activity in addition to the dynamic stretches you just saw before, to really get that pre-race heart rate up and ready to perform. So basically, I consider a dynamic warm-up like 5 to 10 minutes of sub-maximal effort jog. So if you're running your marathon at 9-minute pace, maybe do a 10-minute and 30-second pace run, for 10 minutes beforehand, just again to get your heart rate up, and then perform some of the dynamic stretching that you just saw. That's basically what I do. So about 20 minutes before the race, I run for 10 minutes. I run at my tempo pace for me, and then I perform 5 minutes of the dynamic stretches that you just saw, and it gives me about 2 or 3 minutes to really focus in and go, and I'm ready for my race. Okay, so that is what I do. I think the worst thing you can do, honestly, is just going into intense physical activity without any warm up, with a low heart rate, with cold muscles. It's going to decrease your performance, and in my opinion, lead you more likely to injure yourself. So In the last few minutes here, I'm going to talk about strength training because strength training I don't think is controversial at all. There have been a lot of studies that have been done specifically in the endurance running athlete about strength training. At the end of the day, I think most quality evidence says you should do it. It's going to improve your running economy specifically. It's something that you should add in to your training routine at least once or twice a week. Sometimes, depending on the source, sometimes people say 3 times. I think that's a little bit much. I'll go into that in a second. But you can see here, I mean, these 2 studies, they significantly increase your running economy and performance. The goals of strength training, really, you're trying to work those fast twitch muscles that I don't really have many of those anymore. I don't lift weights as much as I should just because of my schedule. But really, it improves your running economy. It improves the way that your body moves through space. The more efficient you are moving through space, the faster you're going to be. It also helps to mix up your workouts. Running for 5 or 6 days a week can be a beatdown. And so if you were able to change things up, it can prevent burnout. Like burnout's a big thing in exercise. Overtraining syndrome is a big thing. And so by getting things changed up, it helps you a lot. And then just in general, it improves health, just generally speaking. So how I add in strength training, or how you add in strength training, again, most evidence seems to recommend 1 or 2 times a week adding in some strength training. This can be done in a variety of different ways. Going to a gym and doing weightlifting, okay? It enhances strength and muscle hypertrophy. Doing plyometrics, which are like more explosive type movements, both kind of like a cardio activity, but then also strengthening the muscles. Or doing, like a circuit training where you're kind of going around, you're doing cardio, maybe you get on the treadmill and jog for 20 minutes and then you get off and then you lift weights and kind of go back and forth. I don't necessarily do that very often. I would typically, stick to weightlifting or plyometrics. The big thing to say here is it can be tough to fit into your schedule. And so, running, work, school, depending on your age, life, like it all gets in the way. And if you're trying to run and then you stop running and then you're going to the gym, it takes up a significant amount of time. And I'm not naive to the time struggles, between myself waking up, getting my little girl to school, coming here to my clinic or going to my other clinics or covering sporting events. It's tough to fit all this training in. In an ideal world, we would all get paid to run professionally, and we would be able to wake up and run for an hour or 2 and come home and cool off and drink a protein shake and recover completely and then go to the gym for an hour and a half. Like, it's just hard to do. Okay. So, again, like I said, there's only really so much time that you can dedicate in a day to activity. But again, I really think that adding strength work in 1 or 2 times a week is worthwhile. And I will show you guys kind of more of what I'm talking about in terms of specific activity in a minute. People want to know what I do specifically. I don't lift weights, and that's not because I don't think it's good. I think it is. I just don't have time to do that. So typically I'll do like a T25 or a P90X workout, more usually like a whole body workout that I focus on twice a week, specifically related to my core, my back, my upper body, where I'm doing those explosive type movements. The workout typically lasts 25 to 30 minutes, and I'm usually doing those on my off running days. So I have 2 off running days a week, and that's where I do my 2 plyometric or I guess you could consider it in a way circuit training days per week. So I am active every day of the week, but I'm not running every day of the week to allow my muscles, my slower twitch muscles to kind of recover. At the end of the day, consistency is key, and that goes not only for plyometrics or running, just in general activity. Being consistent is very, very important for us. Okay. So I'm going to pull up these 2 things for you really, really quick. This is from Nike.com. This one's from Runner's World. 2 places that I definitely don't mind getting information from. I'm very, very big on, again, going through everything step by step. I'm not going to recommend you guys specific exercises without actually seeing you in person and watching your form. I don't want you to go out and hurt yourself. These guys will go through in depth and actually, talk about strength training a little bit more. They will repeat a lot of the same stuff that I'm telling you now, but then they will also, again, you can see here, actually go through and show you things to do. The website is up here. It's on Nike.com. I encourage you guys to go to this website here and look at the specific strength training exercises they recommend you do. Try to fit these into your schedule once or twice a week. It will benefit you. It will make you faster. Science has proven that. Let me go back in here for us really quick. And then this is from Runner's World, okay? So same thing. This is from Runner's World out of the UK, actually. And so again, it talks about strength training. It's going to tell you guys, let me get out of here. Oh, no. Okay. I don't know why this is telling it to me right now, but I was able to access this earlier without any significant issues. This is going to go through, and again, it's going to talk about different ways that you can add in strength training. It's going to talk about specific exercises. I was a super big fan of this Nike site though, because it goes through a lot of the exercises that I recommend, shows you how to do them, talks about why you're doing them, talks about how often you know, you're doing things for 2 or 3 seconds, like it says here. You're resting for a minute or two. It goes in depth, more than I'm going to be able to do in a 30-minute lecture for you guys. But I really do prefer this website. So take-home points. I have 5 take-home points for you. At the end of the day, after these 30 minutes, if nothing else sticks, this is what I want to stick with you. Static stretching has not been scientifically proven to improve physiologic running performance, relief from muscle soreness, or for chronic injury prevention in running specifically. Again, running specifically, okay? And that although it doesn't seem to have any real physical benefit, there may be a psychological benefit to stretching if it's something that you've been doing over and over, and it's a way that you psychologically prepare for a race, okay? The worst thing that you can do is go into a moderate intensity run or a race without any warm-up, completely cold. Your performance will suffer, okay? The last thing here, or I guess second to last thing here, is that strength training has been shown to improve your running economy. It's been shown to improve your performance. That is a real thing. It is proven by science. I think it's something that you need to add in once or twice a week to be most effective. Some sources recommend up to 3 times weekly, okay? That is all I have for you guys. I wish you guys luck in your training for Cowtown. I wish you health, and I hope that you guys benefit from some of my advice here. So thank you very much.